Hello everyone, Jazz the Gamer here, and today we will be talking about possibly one of the most underrated fighting games of all time, as well as a personal favorite of mine, and that's Killer Instinct 2013. With its incredible roster, well thought out game design, and genuinely one of the best online experiences I think I've ever had, I'll be talking in great detail why Killer Instinct is not just the best Xbox game you've never heard of, as the title says, but also the closest we've ever gotten to a perfect fighting game. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it, starting with the game's history. Our story begins in 1992 with the release of Street Fighter II. I promise this is relevant. As we know, whenever something gets even remotely popular, every single major studio in the entire world wants to copy it. And copy it they did, to varying degrees of success. Sometimes you got Fatal Fury, other times you got Dino Rex. You gotta take what you can get. This whole fighting game thing was still pretty new. In the midst of the fighting game boom came a game so controversial that it became the selling point: Mortal Kombat. With its reputation being the game that your parents do not want you to play, that just made people want to play it all the more. Heck, this game and a couple others is the reason why the ESRB even exists. I know that that's a gross oversimplification, but I kinda have to talk about Killer Instinct at some point in time. Rare saw this and decided to take a crack at the whole fighting game thing by targeting Mortal Kombat's audience directly, with violent finishers, a gritty art style, and the most 90s fighting game roster you will ever see. I mean, what other fighting game allows you to play as a ninja, a dinosaur, and a robot and/or cyborg? They didn't really decide until the reboot in the same game. And thus, the first Killer Instinct game would release in 1994 to moderate success. Yeah, the game didn't really catch on like a whole ton of other games from this time did, but it did at least get enough of an audience to warrant a sequel, which added more characters, making it the definitive most 90s fighting game roster ever. Featuring a Conan the Barbarian ripoff, a Kung Fu lady, no not that one, a gargoyle, a two-headed Cyclops, and a few more. The series never really got that much attention, and while it did get a few ports, that's about it. That is, until June 10th, 2013, when the long-awaited reboot for Killer Instinct was announced as a free-to-play game that would come with the Xbox One. The game was developed by Double Helix Studios, and they handled Season 1, then Iron Galaxy stepped in and they handled Seasons 2 and 3, with the last update releasing in 2013 for the game's 10-year anniversary, thus giving us the version of the game we know today, the Anniversary Edition. And now, let's talk about the game itself. Although I won't go into too much detail, especially because I have a guide for it if you want to learn how to play for yourself, linked down in the description. But for right now, I'll say this. This game is very accessible to newer players, while also having a high skill ceiling, meaning that there's a lot to learn if you want to get better at the game. One of the big reasons why the game is so accessible is because of the universal nature of the combo system. Basic combos have little difference from character to character, making every single character easy to pick up, while having some advanced stuff later down the road that makes them hard to master. As well, I will also say this. The game feels so good to play. Pulling off combos feels incredibly intuitive. It's also really fun to pull off combos, especially when you can keep them going for a long time. Not only that, but it has one of the best defensive mechanics I think I've ever seen for any given fighting game. If you are being comboed, then you can hit them with a good old-fashioned
Combo Breaker!
That's right, you can just nope out of being comboed if you correctly predict which strength of move they're going to use next, light, medium, or heavy, by pressing a punch and kick of the same strength. Not only that, but in an incredible move to not make the combo breaker too overpowered while also not diminishing the usefulness of it all, we have the
Counter Breaker!
That's right. You can break the combo breaker. Friggin' amazing. I friggin' love this game. It's so well designed. This is such a good mechanic. Just Now let's talk about what's probably the best aspect of any given fighting game: the roster. Killer Instinct has a total of 29 playable characters. Not too little to where it feels like there's no variety, but also not too many as to overwhelm newer players with so many options. Most importantly, the individual characters themselves are just really cool. The returning characters from the old games are redesigned for the modern day incredibly well, while the new characters fit in seamlessly. And their choices for guest characters are also amazing. And they have been adapted extremely well. The Arbiter from Halo, General Rom from Gears of War, and freaking Rash from the Battletoads. Yes, Rash from Battletoads is in this game. And not only is he the best character in the game, but he also looks amazing, especially in the game's gritty art style. He easily could have been out of place, but man, he couldn't have felt more at home. This game's roster also has some of the most uniquely designed fighting game characters I've ever seen. Gargos being able to summon minions to do his bidding, Idol randomly switching between casting fireballs and bashing your face into the club, and Arya, who is an entire team in a 3v3 tag fighter in a one-on-one setting. And all of that is freaking awesome. I might have used that word so many times that we might as well start an awesome counter. You know what? Screw it. Let's do that. Another aspect of this roster that's handled extremely well is the balance. This game is incredibly well balanced. There's no bad characters in the game, just varying degrees of not as good as the rest, and that's due in large part to the universal nature of KI's combo system. Even with all that said, it's still pretty easy to weed out who the best and worst characters are. Rash is the previously aforementioned best character in the game, followed by Arya, Fulgore, and Omen, while the worst characters in the game are generally Rom, Kimwu, and Saberwolf. And even then, they can still do things, they just have to work harder to get what the better characters can get with lower effort. Which, in the context of this game, doesn't really mean a whole lot. And because of that, there is no such thing as an unplayably bad character. As for that middle section, there is no general consensus on which characters go where. And it really all comes down to any given player's opinion. Most tier lists do, but KI's especially. But overall, the game is incredibly well balanced, and you can do extremely well playing characters that you like, regardless of how good or slightly less good they may or may not be. And last but not least, in terms of character lore, there is a lot of it to go around. Half the characters' individual stories sound like myths of legendary heroes triumphing over great evils, and the other half sound like the plot of a sci-fi action movie. Now let's talk about one of the more important aspects of any given fighting game that tends to go overlooked if you ask me, and that's this game has a gritty sci-fi aesthetic and it works incredibly well here. The way that I would describe the transition from 90s Killer Instinct to 2013 Killer Instinct is that it's like a reboot of an old Saturday morning cartoon updated with a modern art style and modern sensibilities. And the transition was near seamless, as the game's unique art style and way of presenting itself really shine, especially when you get into a match. Because not only are the hit effects really fun to look at, but the announcer does an incredible job. Announcers are always the most overlooked part of any given fighting game, but they really enhance the experience, even in ways that you might not notice. And the Killer Instinct announcer does all that and more with the way he announces how long of a combo you were able to pull off.
Devastated. Godlike combo. Devoured. Lockout. Quad. Solid combo. Ultimate.
The combo breakers and counter breakers. And finally, the iconic
Ultra combo.
Oh, and have mercy on his vocal cords if you keep the combo going for even longer.
Ultra!
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Now let's talk about the single-player content, because when the standard versus mode gets tiring, these are nice alternatives. Starting off, we have the story mode. This isn't like a cinematic story mode like in every Mortal Kombat game from Mortal Kombat 9 onward. This is what the game calls the standard arcade mode, where you fight a couple of opponents, fight a boss at the end, and get a fancy cutscene at the end. It's a neat little way to know about the individual character's lore, but if you want to know the entire game's lore, then boy do I got a good mode for you, because Shadow Lords does that and more. It's essentially an RPG-like story mode, where you can send out different characters on missions or perform them yourself. You can also collect items and equip them on your characters, and even have fights under specific conditions. It's a really nice change from the regular game mode. It also possesses some interesting lore about the games in case you're interested in that. Overall, the single-player offerings are just as good as the multiplayer offerings. Speaking of multiplayer modes, let's talk about one of the most vital aspects of any fighting game post-2009. The online. And I kid you not, this might just be one of the best online experiences I have ever had in a fighting game, with it being one of the earliest fighting games to implement rollback netcode, which basically means that it's really good at predicting what you're going to do. A gross oversimplification, once again, I know, but I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about why and how rollback netcode works the way it does. And I'll link a video by someone more qualified to talk about it than me in the description below in case you're interested. And I think that Killer Instinct arguably does it the best. Not only that, but I guarantee that unless you or your opponent have a potato PC, the most amount of lag you'll experience will be within the first few seconds of a given match. And then it's smooth sailing from there. It's wonderful, and on that note, the user experience is also amazing. Getting into matches or training mode is never a slog. And finally, before we end off this video, let me just mention one last thing. And this is a pretty big deal, because if this doesn't convince you to at least try out the game, I don't know what will. You ready for it? Here it is. There is a free version of this game. Not a free demo, a free version. You can play this game with all of the game modes, with all of the online capability, for as long as you want, for completely free. There is obviously a catch, and the catch being that you can only play as one character, but who that character is changes every week, also known as a free rotating character. You can also permanently unlock two of the characters, that being Jago and Orchid, by playing through Shadow Lords. You don't even have to get that far in order to unlock them, giving you more incentive to play the mode if you want two characters that you can always play as in this version. If you play long enough, you'll have a chance to have played every single character in the game before finally making your choice on whether or not you want to buy the full game. And what's hopefully going to make that choice easier is the fact that this game only costs $30. This is absolutely on the cheaper side of fighting games, especially nowadays. So if you have $30 to spare on a given game, then this isn't that bad investment. And you have all the time in the world to decide whether or not you want to make that investment. Like I said, if this doesn't get you to at least try out the game, be it through the free demo, I don't know what will. This level of accessibility, well thought out character design, and aesthetic, as well as a user experience like no other, makes Killer Instinct 2013, in my objectively correct opinion, the closest we ever got to a perfect fighting game. And with that, we conclude my praise of this wonderful game. If you enjoyed the video or are convinced to play this game for yourself, make sure you leave a like on this video, maybe subscribe to the channel for future videos, and ring the bell for notifications. With that said, I'm jazzed to have been here, and I'll see you next time.